Hey, everybody. I am really, really anxious for you to hear today's interview, and I really want to hear your thoughts because I want to see if this guy has the same effect on you as it did on me. Okay, today I interviewed James Milsom. He's the CMO from Hunter.io. This interview is all about cold email outreach. Okay, now some of you who might have worked with me in the past or you've been following me know that I'm not the biggest fan of cold email, not because I don't think it works, but just because I haven't had the most proven success with cold email. I've been very public that I'm a little bit sort of bearish on email because it's getting harder and harder to deliver. But this guy has this huge report. They analyzed like 11 million emails and interviewed 200 decision makers. And this is just an actual fact conversation. One of my favorite things is that he didn't just do the tropey, obnoxious thing of saying the obvious things that are bad that everybody already knows. He actually talked about what you should do and why you should do it. This guy didn't just get me excited. He straight up changed my mind. Let's get into it. James Milsom from across the pond, you have joined me. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here.
Where are you sitting right now in the world?
Where am I sitting right now in the world? I'm sitting about 3 hours north of London is the simplest way for me to explain that.
Got it. You almost went with the philosophical answer of like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, where are any of us?
Are we?
Right. I love it, man. Well, dude, you know what? I'm really glad we're talking today for a couple of reasons. First of all, email has always been probably the weakest outbound strategy for me, specifically on the technical side. Like I can't keep up with DMark or DKIM or whatever. I don't know. I can't. I get lost.
All the
I hate
acronyms.
it. And right. It's like email outbound is really, it feels like it's on the blurry line between sales and marketing. And so sometimes I'm like, we'll just make marketing care about email and I'll just pick up the phone in between all the emails. But I'm really glad you're here because you have a lot to say about email, more than anybody I've talked to in the last year or so. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear about it. But why don't you give the people what they want for a second? Give us a real quick rundown of who you are and who you work with and sort of why you're here.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the head of marketing at Hunter. We're an all-in-one email outreach platform. We predominantly help founders and small businesses to essentially reach out to their ideal customers. I'm here today because we have gone through the last 6 or 7 months, a whole lot of research, some pretty cool competitions based around March Madness, and really just a whole raft of changes to the Hunter product that are really designed to address the elephant in the room, which is that cold email typically is spam, but it doesn't have to be spam. And the reason that you have the reaction that you just had there is because, much like myself, 3 years ago, honestly, I just saw it as this nuisance channel, this channel that kind of maybe even if I were to do it, it was just a tick box exercise. It wasn't looked as something that was vital to my marketing mix. And I know today I'm really excited to talk about the way that cold email can factor into the mix for MSPs and really to kind of set the record straight to a degree and just at least open people's minds a little bit to the role that outreach can play in their efforts.
So let's jump right into this. I think you call it the State of Cold Email report. Is that what it was?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this really caught my attention when you generated this. And I want to know, let's not bury the lead. What was the most shocking thing that you discovered when you guys compiled the State of Cold Email? And in fact, well, let's start there.
I think for me, the most shocking takeaway is that while 61% of decision makers want to receive cold emails, they report that 95% of the cold emails they receive are spam. And spam to them, it's time wasting, it's poor personalization, which is essentially mail merge, or it's an offer that is completely irrelevant to who they are. That was something that on the one hand, you go, oh, this is fantastic. We spoke to 200 plus decision makers about their preferences, and they say they love cold email. Number one, cold email. And we went out to people across SaaS, across consulting, lots of different verticals here. And they were all saying, we want cold emails. But actually, they're pretty disappointed with what they receive, which you got this optimism and then this smack in the face of reality that actually they suck, the cold emails.
Right. I mean, I think we need to camp there as a starting point.
Mm.
I'm already I'm pretty skeptical / shocked, to be honest, that over half of business owners or decision makers say, yes, please cold email me. Mm-hmm. That's what you're saying, right? That's what you interviewed 200 decision makers, and over 100 of them, or 120 of them, said, yes, please cold email me. That's the best way I want to hear from you. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, probably to get in front of your question that you're about to ask, I think the reason why they respond positively to that question, and they put it number one, and number two was LinkedIn outreach, and then number three was traditional cold calling. I think first and foremost, you and I, we are decision makers, we are leaders, and I think we accept that in our roles, we inevitably have to look at different vendors, different solutions, and as part of that responsibility, look, what's the easiest way for someone to put their product in front of you? It's not using a search engine. It's actually someone reaching into your inbox. It's the most private place that you still have in your workspace if you're really being honest with yourself. And I think that if someone can do the legwork for you and get into the inbox and then have a message that at the very least makes you think, oh, yeah, maybe. No, for instance, I had an email 2 days ago from someone saying, we're a PR firm for the tech industry. We've worked with X, Y, and Z. Can you point me in the right direction of the person that would be responsible for speaking to them about potentially getting some coverage? That's not the best email, but it was the email directed at the right person. They probably knew I was the right person, given the size of our company and the structure. And I responded and said, yes, absolutely, I am that person. Let's talk. It's my job, part of my job, to find the best tools and resources available to help me do our job better. So I think that's probably somewhere in the psyche of the people that responded that responded to us on that question. And I think that is something that we all know, but we don't want to admit. And cold email just has that dirty nature to it for some reason, which, yeah, it's not shocking, but
right.
I don't know. What do you think?
I've never heard it articulated the way that you are now, but I'm also feeling very seen in the way you're saying it, because actually I read a lot of the emails I get, but I don't respond to them because they're just not good. And I don't mean that in a snobby, look, man, I'm really gracious to salespeople. Like, I take cold calls, I let people say their piece, I read emails, I even take the door-to-door. Spectrum Internet has been to my door a lot of times. Okay, a lot of times. And I let the kid say his thing, and I go, hey man, how long you been in sales? Great job. Listen, I'm never moving back to Spectrum, but you did a great job. Okay, goodbye. But when an email is like, maybe because what you're saying, it's actually fairly intimate. Because sometimes I'm working within about 30 to 45 seconds of my eyes opening in the morning.
Right.
And I live on the West Coast. What that means is I wake up to a full slate of Slack and email and LinkedIn notifications. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, man, I'm in sales. So right when I start, I go to my notifications and I look for any any clients or prospects that have responded. So sometimes I'm literally getting an email laying in my bed. And I think there's a double-edged sword to the intimate nature of sending somebody an email, in that you've really got it's a swing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's got to be good, or it is really bad, and there's kind of nothing in between.
Right. Yeah. How many times have you actually looked at an email like, this is a home run, instead of you just swung and you've missed? don't you think that that intimacy element deserves to be rewarded though? If if you're knocking on
Yeah,
someone's door and you
yeah, I
walk into
think
their house, then surely, you would expect that person to be polite, courteous, and do something that rewards their. It's a gamble. It's a gamble to open up that email in the first place. So surely the thing that you read should be relevant and actually make you not feel dirty for opening it in the first place.
is this why? Do you think this is why so many decision makers have a visceral, emotional, and dare I say, sort of like a juvenile response to getting solicitations? Is that they feel almost as if they've been wronged by somebody reaching out to them. I'm not talking about good decision makers. I'm talking about
Yeah.
the shitty ones. Um, but do you think there's something there, like because people have phoned it in for so long that
Mm.
they're feeling like their attention is being taken advantage of, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I think that there is a threshold that we all reach, even in our personal emails. We will still get. It's typically spam, but there'll be some sort of outreach in our inboxes as well. So it doesn't actually. This isn't exclusive to the role of someone who's a decision maker. But yeah, I think if you keep getting duped or kind of led astray by someone's email, eventually you can be like, okay, well, anytime I see this, I'm either just going to immediately delete this, and to get into someone's inbox, to your point, is nigh on impossible to a degree now. So if you do, then
Yeah.
you've done something right. So surely, again, you should make that work. But then also, how often have you got the email that is of high quality and then you take it to the next stage? I think if you were to focus on those people, and I absolutely want to do that as we look at our slate of research at Hunter moving forward, I want to focus in on those people that actually opened, replied. What was that interaction like afterwards? Was there a disconnect
Mm.
between the email and the person you spoke to? Was it actually a person? Like those are the things that I wouldn't say keep me up at night, but they're definitely the things that I'm interested in and I think are worth, you know, double clicking on.
This is one of the things I like about you is that you're such an actual nerd for the craft
Yes.
itself.
Yeah.
Um, that's a dude. There's something that you just brought up that I think we could spend the rest of the episode on. We won't, but the disconnect between even let's say you pay somebody to write a perfect email for you, and then your dumb face shows up and you can't back up any of the professionalism, any of the authority
Right.
that you're borrowing against from an email that essentially misrepresented
Hmm.
your caliber as a professional. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yep.
That I mean, I've gotten emails from maybe I get an email from a BDR or something who's like, boom, really well written pain or outcome, and it's tight, and there's a trigger that they observed, and I'm like, okay, cool. Well, tell me more. And they're like, well, now you have to jump into our big massive sales process, so you have to take this 10-minute pre-demo call, and then I'm like, oh, so I can't. You're
Yeah.
not even gonna let me see your product after all of this. You
Yeah.
got my attention. I'm on the line. I said, tell me more, and now I have to jump into your Rube Goldberg machine in order to get to answer any of my questions.
Yeah.
Now I'm out, you know?
Yeah.
So lowering that barrier, lowering the friction bar, lowering the barrier to get people to engage with you can only really take you so far. It can only take you to step 2. But a
Hmm.
perfectly crafted email is not going to get you to a close. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, I would also say a perfectly crafted email is worthless if you've not even targeted the right person. Inherent in it
Mm,
being a perfectly crafted email is that you targeted the right people. So if you've
yeah.
completely got the wrong people, then that's again going to be a red flag. But to your question, once you have written that email and someone's responded, um, that's where you get this fun, and you mentioned at the top of the episode about where does cold outreach sit in terms of, is it marketing, is it sales? I mean, I would argue it's marketing, and my career has been spent in marketing, and I've managed SDRs that have done this. But that's when you get into that fun gray area where if you haven't built the target lists, written the copy, and then figured out what happens downstream as a team, if you are in a larger team, I should preface that, then yeah, you're gonna get you're gonna get a very broken experience. It's no different from when I build inbound funnels and someone comes in and we enrich and we push them down a particular nurture path. If that nurture path just ends up with everyone coming straight back into the same bucket, and then they get handed off to the same team, and that team doesn't have the information that helps them to be more effective at closing the deal, it's all worthless. And it's irrelevant that cold email is the cheapest way for you to actually get in front of your audience. If you've put all that effort in and then you get to this conversation, or hopefully get to a conversation, and your processes are clunky, or you just have an unprofessional team, or the sales cycle is unnecessarily long, and I've seen that plenty of times, it's wasted effort. And I think it's a shame. It's a shame. I've seen outbound that's been great, and I've also seen outbound that's been awful. I've been the author of both
Sure.
of those things. And when you hand it off to the biz dev team or the AEs and they're not able to close it, it's either because you've not qualified the people right in terms of getting into the funnel, or the message you put out there is not exactly the thing that they're about to pitch to that person when they get in front
Hmm.
of the sales guys. So yeah, it to your point, I could talk about this for the entire episode.
Well, here's what I think we should do. I want to pivot into some specifics because
Yeah.
anybody can say, don't spam.
Mhm.
But I think, to me, I think experts like yourself and myself, dare I say, if we can't actually articulate how to do it correctly, then you really don't get any brownie points for being able to say things that aren't good about it. But you have this great state of cold email, plus you're a cold email guy, plus just to double down on the merit here that you eat your own dog food, you're on this podcast because your team cold emailed me.
Yes.
And I get a lot of asks to come on my podcast. It's usually like some guy writes a book and he hires one of those like write a book for you or get your book published in 90 Day people. And then they're just like, can this guy talk about his book on your podcast? And I'm like, this is about agricultural regulation. So no, this is not this. No, I'm not going to have this guy on my podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, you cold emailed me. Your team cold emailed me, and it worked. So then I was like, let me talk to this guy. And then you and I met, and we were supposed to meet for 15 minutes. We talked for 45 minutes. But I want to get specific because I want the listener to actually leave here with like, I want them to get things that they can go write a better email today because they listened to this podcast. So I kind of want to go beat by beat. Okay.
Okay.
So let's start here. If you don't mind, I want to talk about subject lines first.
Yes.
Well, maybe even let's go one step back to deliverability, because this to me is where I personally get intimidated with email. I email IT companies, and IT companies all think that their inbox is like guarding the queen's jewels, and they don't
Right.
let anybody get any emails in because they're all incredibly anally afraid of concerned about cybersecurity. So maybe that's one of the reasons I've always been sort of bearish on it for my own business. But like, is there anything practical that you can give us that's helpful in this setting about how to get more emails actually delivered into an
Yeah.
inbox?
Yeah. I mean, there are some basics here, and we have a cold email guide that specifically goes into the technical side. Um, and it's not worth me going into
Can I
that.
ask it this way? So there's the technical stuff,
Yeah.
but is the way that you write an email, does that inform, like what you put in the email body itself, does that inform
Yes.
whether or not it's going to get flagged in spam? And if
Yeah.
so, what do you do to make sure that it's more likely to get delivered?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of what's in the the email itself, the number one reason you're going to go straight to spam is if you have let's say 500 people getting exactly the same email. That is a red
I see.
flag. If there's no variation, if it looks like it is just mass emailing, then email service providers will flag that and say, "Whoa, let's just hold up a second. This is clearly not reputable. It's not trustworthy." it won't get through to
Okay.
the inbox. It maybe even not even get through, the initial filters. So that's why it's imperative for listeners to think about outreach in a way where, the the cold email report that we wrote revealed that 50 is typically the best number of recipients you can have for sending an email in one go. And that's
What?
because, oh,
Okay, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
that's
what
right.
if I send the same email 25 times a day for 10 days in a row? Is my email provider going to be looking back historically to be like, you keep sending the same email in multiple batches? Or are they just looking at, like, what's the window that they're assessing?
Yeah, so I think if you were to send 25 emails a day, 5 days a week over a 2, 3 week period, that wouldn't necessarily flag that wouldn't flag email up with email service providers. Um,
Okay.
but but what the risk is there is that again, you're not putting effort into actually researching and creating unique
Yeah.
messaging for the recipient. So while you may get through technically, you're still going to come up to a gate and you're not going to be able to go through that gate because what you've written is rubbish.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. So we solve the technical problem, but we don't solve
Yeah,
the real problem, which is the human problem. But
right, right.
you got to get it delivered because to me, there's nothing more intimidating than the fact that I did all this research. I wrote this really well crafted email, and they literally never saw it because
Yeah,
Google decided or whatever their email security decided that it wasn't relevant to them.
right.
Are there and is there truth still to the like if I want to do video prospecting and I want to embed a thumbnail or a GIF of a video, like I know that for a long time and in different seasons, people say you can't have any links in your email, and I think that makes
Mm,
sense.
mm.
But like, do things like that? If I wanted to do video prospecting and embed a video link or something, does that decrease my deliverability? Do we know?
No, no. The research that we ran actually proved that if you use images, embeds like that, emojis, it doesn't actually make a difference in getting
Okay.
your email delivered. Um, and I would argue, and this is just me, sort of my theory here. I would argue that it doesn't make a difference because um, if the spam filters are reading the content of the email and it's very clear that Brian is writing an email to James, and in the email he says, James, you're the head of marketing at Hunter. We provide a branding toolkit to help you. I would love to give you a free, or not free, sorry, free is a trigger word. I would love to give you an audit, a complimentary audit of
Hmm.
your brand guidelines so that we can give you potentially a gift of this kit. Here's a video of me walking through how we would do the audit. Like that's you're addressing who I am. You are being very clear with your intentions. It's relevant to me because marketing and brand are interlocked. And you're saying there is a video here, and this is what the video contains. It's not like you've sent an email to 500 people that is very generic in what it's saying, and it's just the video is embedded. Like there's no
An embedded
context.
video that says
Yeah,
"check this out!" exclamation mark.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
an email server is going to be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Who are you trying to hack?"
Right, right. Yeah.
But okay, so that's and free is a trigger word. Tell me what you mean
Mm.
by that. Do you just mean psychologically, or do you mean technically? It's a trigger word.
Um, Technically, it's a trigger word. So with
Okay.
Hunter, when you and I should be clear. I don't do these podcasts to push Hunter the product, but this is just an example for you. When you write your emails within Hunter's campaigns feature, there is the option to check for the spam score of the copy you've written. So you could go into Hunter right now, get a free account, write some copy for a campaign, and click the spam score button, and it will evaluate the copy to see if it's spammy.
Cool.
Anything that normally flags up quickly is when you talk about free or saving money or something that implies a transactional nature to the email. Like that will just not, that just won't get delivered. Or if it gets delivered, again, it's gonna get flagged by the actual person reading it. So the inevitable thing
Cool.
that you need to do is to look at what you're doing in terms of the outreach and think about outreach as a conversation starter, not the transaction itself. It's, I would like to talk to you about this thing, not we have this thing, we're doing a 30% offer right now. You can get it for $500 instead of, whatever else. That's the
Yeah.
difference there. Is avoiding this scammy. It's scammy, it's
Yeah.
spammy. They're kind of, yeah, the same thing.
Okay, this is really helpful stuff. So now we've gotten the email in the inbox.
Mhm.
The next thing I would think is subject line and probably preview text, which is maybe a sub bullet. But can you kind of clear the air on subject lines? Some people say it should have a name in it. Some people say it should never have a name. A lot of people say never use an emoji in a subject line. Just don't use certain words. How do you make it look like a real email, but also you don't want to be disingenuous. You don't want to write re: something because that's,
Yeah.
or do you, what does
Yeah.
the research show us about what subject lines are more likely to get people to open your email, and maybe even if there's any correlation with higher reply rates as well? Because you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing was that there was a split across the analysis that we did, and in some instances, when you included someone's name and had a question posed in the subject line, that would perform well. In other instances, when it felt like, let's say we worked in the same company, and I just typed the subject line out in lowercase, and it was very short. That performed very well. So the data was not necessarily conclusive. But what I would say, if we just think about psychology for a second, if your email gets into someone's inbox, awesome, you've done something correct. What you want to do is stand out, because we will typically scan our, I don't know about you, but this is what I do. I scan, honestly, I scan for my team, I scan for my manager, our CEO, Matt, and I scan for our leadership team. And then I'll then think about, whatever emails I have in my inbox when I look at my inbox when I wake up in the morning.
Mhm.
If you think about things psychologically here for a second, how you could stand out in the inbox is if everyone has written a subject line that is taking up the entire width of the line in your inbox, then maybe you should have something that's very short. If everyone's using emojis, don't use emojis. And that's a quick test you can do on your own inbox. It's not, you don't have to buy a product to be able to figure this out. Just look in your inbox now and look at the patterns that are appearing, and then find a way to disrupt what your brain is defaulting to in terms of, oh, that stands out. It's a two-word subject line. Definitely, I'm going
Yeah.
to open that. Like it looks different. It's going to get your attention.
Nice. That's a good answer. That makes sense. I like that. You mentioned that the data is split. It's essentially inconclusive because
Yeah.
I think specific subject line specifically has always been an enigma, because I find that subject line trends are cyclical,
Hmm.
probably for the exact same reason that you are talking about here, because what happens is people don't know what to do, and so they do what everybody does. And then everybody's doing the same thing, and then you have these monstrous sort of, I'll call these like these undercurrent trends in outbound, which of course is going to then skew, like a higher percentage of outbound is going to respond in a certain way because everybody is doing it. So there's more emails going out with the same template, therefore more of those templates are in fact getting feedback. It doesn't necessarily mean that was actually the right thing to do.
Right.
It's the same way that fashion is cyclical. Like, all the kids walking around look exactly like I looked in 2003. You know what I mean? All
Yeah.
my school crushes wore crop tops and jellies and big ass cargo pants. And now all the little kids are doing that again. And like,
Right.
it's not because that is an objectively cool thing. It's because it's become cyclical for whatever reason, right? And I feel like outbound efforts are super cyclical, because I remember back 2016-ish, I was working in working capital, and this one sales rep wrote an email sequence that was so much better than the marketing teams that they took it and they made it company wide. And he
Wow.
wrote subject line working capital. I had never seen it done before.
Mm.
And it was confusing to me because I went, whoa, is this already a thread? Because that's why you write re, because it makes it look like there's an existing conversation. Dude, it went to like the open rate like quadrupled from the stuff that they were sending out. But the thing is, a month later, not only did it not work anymore, it was having adverse effects once you've done it to a certain degree. I remember I got an email. I still think about this. It was a client of mine who had sent me a question and I hadn't responded. So he emails me, subject line, ice cream. And I was like, what the frick are you talking about? And I opened it and he asked me a 1-sentence question that was like a quick response. We never talked about it. If you're listening, Roger, I never forgot your ice cream email. And I was like, this is like a flare gun. You can use it one time and it will absolutely get somebody's attention. What I'm not telling all the listeners is go write ice cream in your subject lines. But the guy understood, I have to get Brian's attention right now, and I know that he won't be mad that I got his attention because I need a yes or no answer to this thing. I need it right now. And so if you think about what he was trying to achieve, he achieved it. And I went, oh, blah, blah, blah. Yes, that's my answer. And we never talked about his subject line, about the ice cream subject line again. But, you know, they said never use questions, or then they say don't use emojis, then they say don't use first names in subject lines. And to your point, how about you just look at what people are doing to you and what bothers you and what do you open? Even go do an audit of your inbox, the last 500 emails, look at the reds versus the unreads, and put it in ChatGPT and be like, tell me trends of what do the subject lines have in common that I read versus the subject lines I didn't read.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that is important for people to think about is while I have experience with outbound, it's still not traditionally marketing. And one of the things that I think catches a lot of people off guard, and I know this was the case for me when I started out in my career as like a marketing intern in 2013, that's a while ago. I mistook email marketing for email outreach or cold email, whatever you want to call it. And so another thing that would absolutely, and I should have said this earlier, that something that would absolutely get you caught in spam traps is if you just send an HTML designed email, an email that has loads of images, that looks like a marketing email, feels like a marketing email. And the reason I say that this is something that's important to think about is that if we don't look at outreach as a marketing activity, although it does generate awareness, we then can start to think about things like subject lines and tone and copy differently. You don't need a perfectly written email. And the research that we pulled together shows that. What you do need is to be relevant. You need to show that you're trustworthy, and you need to have some personalization. If you have those three things, it doesn't matter if, and you know, 5 years ago, if you told me this, I was like, Brian, no, my team will do exactly what I tell them with our branding and our messaging. If you let yourself be creative, the ice cream subject line is a great example there. If you let yourself be creative, then that's what will disrupt people. But when you start to think about things in silos and this neat little box that, you know, our positioning is this, our core messaging are these three things that we have to make sure that the copy has that. That's when it stops being this intimate one-to-one type of activity and starts becoming this mass activity that I think a lot of people fall into the trap of wanting it to be this mass activity, because if you have a clear proposition, clear messaging, and you have a strong brand, then surely outbound should work just the same as inbound, just the same as you know, referrals, whatever. And it's just not the same.
Right. So there is a difference between email marketing and email outreach. And what I'm hearing you say is that email marketing is like, hey, these are opted in newsletter awareness nurture emails to push campaigns or to drive long-term behavior or whatever, versus I'm trying to get a meeting with this person and I'm using their inbox to get their attention. And so I'm going to write them a probably short, very specific, real person email to get them to go, huh, and reply.
Yes, except for the length. This was interesting. The length of your email is irrelevant. And
okay, do tell.
Yeah, so the length of the email is irrelevant. So we analyzed, I should have said, like, we analyzed 11 million emails from Hunter users, and that's where we got this data from. And when you look at the length of the email, you have this massive swing between people who are writing 50 words to some people who are writing 300 words, and I thought that was so odd. And I thought it was so odd to the point that this actually created a campaign for us. We looked at that data point as a team and thought, but we've always been taught that it needs to be short, it needs to be sharp, it needs to, it needs to have a hook. And if it's anything more than two sentences, then you're wasting someone's time. So we wanted to figure out, is there something to this? And it gave birth to this campaign that we ran, which was a cold email tournament called Messaging Madness. Absolutely nothing to do with March Madness for the NCAA if they are listening to this.
Yes,
Definitely
right.
not. Yeah,
Dear litigious American college sports, leave us alone. This is just about emails. Okay.
exactly right.
Your ass is
And
covered, James. Continue.
thank you, Brian. So this tournament, what we were trying to do is take everything we've been talking about today on this episode, which is being relevant, personal, building good, strong lists, aka knowing exactly who you're reaching out to, why you're doing that, and being very clear in what you're asking someone to do. And we created four different scenarios. There was an SEO manager, there was a business consultant, there was a pre-revenue founder, and a growth manager, and we gave very specific scenarios to each of these people, for each of these personas. And we had hundreds of people enter. We narrowed it down to 64 people. Um, we had 16 people per scenario. And fast forward, 130,000 votes later, and we get to our follow-up four, our final four. Yes, I named it after cheesy cold email terminology like open rate 8, follow-up 4. Yes. Um, but
Nice.
what we did after the tournament ended is go back and look at the trends that we can kind of pull out, and we pulled together a report on this. And each of the last four people, so the winners of their scenario, they all wrote in different tones, different styles, different frameworks, and more interesting than anything else to me, different lengths. We had some people who, I believe it's the SEO manager, the email was super short, had emojis. We had the business consultant, very long, very long. And the readability, or I should say the language and I guess the reading age was much higher. It's probably college level, if being honest. But then if you stop and think about it, that makes sense because this
Mhm.
business consultant was reaching out to CEOs of companies to offer their business strategy consulting, whereas the SEO manager is reaching out to probably other SEO managers to get their attention super quick, offer value, and it doesn't have to be any sort of real depth. It's just like links for links. That's what it is. And so, long story short, everything you said there is correct, but the length of your email should be dictated by what you know of the recipient. And when I say of the recipient, I mean
Mm.
the persona that you're trying to reach out to. Brian may be the persona you have, and you have, ran some tests. That's why 50 people in a campaign is important. You've ran some tests, you know that Brian reacts more so to short copy. Great. Whereas James may be another persona you want to reach out to. And for some reason, he likes war and peace, like this answer I'm giving you.
Uh-huh.
And he wants a longer email. You need to mirror, a bit like that episode of The Office where Andy keeps saying Michael's name. You need to mirror the person, not to the point that it's creepy, but mirror the person with their style, what they prefer, and give them that. Don't give them something that they're going to go, ugh, what is this?
Hmm. That is a really interesting data point that
Mhm.
there's no correlation between there's no flat correlation between length of email and success of the email is what you're saying because
Yeah.
it's completely subjective to the user. Now, could we then drill down and find verticalized trends like because to your point, can we personify? Can we make an avatar that says, well, the average accountant is like this, and so I'm going to write an accountant style email, which is going to be more this kind of verbiage, this kind of length, based off of they're probably this age.
Yeah.
Can we find those things over time?
Yes, absolutely. The the thing that I love about outbound, and again, this has been a long journey for me, and I think we all probably start in the same place, how we look at outbound, is that if we have a learning mentality, if we think about just trialing things, if we have a small campaign to 50 people, and we're doing this right now, I should be very transparent. We do this. We're doing this right now. We have a short campaign to one to sales people, one to founders, and we're actually sharing the report. And what we're doing is testing, first and foremost, subject lines. And again, eating our own dog food here. We're doing human written subject lines, AI written subject lines. Which one of those perform better against, in that segment? And then the next phase will be, okay, human written copy, personalized versus, and I'm really excited to be able to start talking about this. We're developing a writing assistant that will help you to overcome a lot of these things that we've been talking about here, which obviously is driven by AI, but it creates unique copy that is personal and relevant to the recipient. And so we're testing that as well. So yeah, I mean, you should be able to get into a position where you're able to have, within your ICP, you may have five people that are or five types of people that are the decision maker in a business, but one might be a CEO, Charlie, one might be a managing director, Mike, there might be someone else who is Oliver, the chief operating officer. They all have different styles of things that they like. And how do you know that? Because you ran loads of small campaigns to those people to try and get a sense what makes them open, what makes them reply, what makes them convert. And then the end goal should be a very concise understanding of, it's an avatar, it's a persona, whatever, that you can then use to start to scale this effectively. And that's where things like the writing assistant that we're developing is going to help you to do that, because you'll have to share the persona in terms of how they like to be spoken to, what your tone should be. Are you using a framework? What particular goal do you have with this outreach? What is it about them that would react to a cold email? All that information, and you don't have to do this as a writing assistant, by the way, you can do it yourself. That should help you to get better. And to avoid falling into the trap that I think we all do, which is, this is, to your point, Brian, this is the thing that's trending right now. We should do that. Everyone's selling a system, but the reality is the system doesn't work if you don't know what to do with it. And so you've got to put in some time and effort into understanding your audience and being able just to come up with creative ways to split test your copy, subject lines, even just your offer. One day I might be reaching out to you and asking, hey, can I come onto your podcast? The next time it might be, we have this research that I think would be interesting to MSPs. They probably both end up in this conversation, but I'm going to trial a different hook here. So,
right.
Yeah, it's about being open to trying new ideas, testing them, and then honestly, I've failed a lot more than I've succeeded with outbound.
Sure. Well, every successful person in the world has failed more than they succeeded. That's why they're successful. So I'm kind of shook at the idea of a test audience as small as 50 people. That's enough for you to start drawing correlations, you think?
Yes. Yeah. So it's about making small tweaks. So think of it as, brick by brick by brick, you're starting to build up, a staircase. But
sure,
you can only do that for these small increments, because with 50 people, you can test that. If you have enough email accounts set up, you could probably do that in a day, and then leave maybe 3 days for a time window to figure out, Dave might be out on a holiday or whatever. Like, give enough time for someone to respond. But by making these small tweaks, you should be able to start to see patterns. And then when you step back, probably after a month, you can go, okay, this is probably what we now need to do for the next phase. It's uncomfortable hearing 50. We felt uncomfortable looking at that data and then trying to reconcile how we've done outbound in the past, and like you have, Brian, and our listeners, and what the data is telling us. Now, it's not telling you only reach 50 people. You could run 100 different variations at exactly the same time and get out to so many more people. But don't send that email to, to 5,000 people at the same time.
Right. Right, of course. Yeah, no, I mean, and I don't have any problem with iteration. I think iteration is an essential part of. This is what's to me so freeing about sales, is that there is a clear definition of whether or not your sales method works, because you make more sales. That's the litmus test. Do you make more money? Yes or no? If you don't make more money, it doesn't work. So people oftentimes will bring you this like empirical, demanding, desk pounding report that says, do this and you're going to be a zillionaire. If you don't make any more money, it was a bad freaking decision. It didn't work. So the ultimate test of whether or not anything James is or I are ever saying is if it worked. You know what I mean? Now we're not. I love that you're not giving silver bullets, because there's no such thing as a silver bullet. If silver bullets existed, all of us would be gillionaires. We would live in a utopia with everybody has every single thing they ever wanted, and none of us would be working. But silver bullets don't exist. So you have to iterate. What's shocking to me, though, is that you could collect enough information from just 50 emails, because I sometimes get concerned about I almost said this earlier, but I didn't want to derail the conversation because you were onto something exciting. But like, there's a lot of like data farming and like sales and RevOps research companies that I won't name, but they basically like in 2018 or so, there was a big one that came out, and they were kind of like cutting edge of AI driven data, where they're like, we've analyzed 1 million call recordings, and this is what makes you a good salesperson. And they started putting out all these white papers, and you know who I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's like those who cannot do teach, and those who have no education, they just have to mimic. And so you have people mimicking successful salespeople with these little external gimmicks, right? Like, for example, I'm just going to give you an example. This still grinds my gears, and it's been almost a decade since I read this thing, and I'm still angry about it. But these guys said, oh, hey, the best salespeople pause for 2 seconds after an objection on a sales call. Therefore, you should wait 2 seconds. Now, that's not bad advice. Here's my problem with it. I called that company, and I talked to one of their sales reps, and I said, hey, I want to do this thing. How much does it cost me for this data intelligence tool that you have? And you could basically hear the kid counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. And I said to him right then and there, I was like, okay, whoa, buddy, we need to stop. I said, why do you think the best sales reps wait 2 seconds? And it's like, well, because of, and I'm like, no. It's because they're thinking about their reply.
Yep.
They're not counting to 2, you freaking idiot. They're just, they're having a normal human being conversation. And the people who don't think are the ones who have memorized responses. So then they just tally, they flip to the page in their binder, and they say what the binder says. They say what the script says. Obviously, those people are going to perform. They're not going to perform as well. But I don't pause in conversation for dramatic effect. I pause to collect my thoughts, because I care about what I'm going to say next. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's this, yep. I think that there's this like deep foundational correlation causation fallacy in almost all RevOps data intelligence, in my opinion. And so people, they over engineer sometimes, where they're like, we did 5,000 iterations of 5 people at a time. I'm like, dude, that's not helpful to you. But well, these 6 people got a round button, these 6 people got an oval button, and 3 clicked that one and 4 clicked that one. Therefore, oval buttons perform better. No, yeah. that is not necessarily valuable. You know what I'm saying? And it becomes this echo chamber of feedback, because it's like none of us really know what anybody wants, and so we're trying to turn people into information so that we can optimize human beings. When in reality, a big thing I'm pulling away from your state of cold email is that human beings are not formulaic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Anyway, I'll stop.
research.
I'll get off my bandstand. Now I'll pass the mic. I mean, thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, firstly, yes, the research backs that up. Messaging madness back that up. But if I can back up a second, the reason why what you said there is true, I believe, is that for the last 100+ years, sales and marketing, doesn't matter what you want to call it, it's been all about connecting a person to a better day-to-day life. What is it that you have can add value to make that person save time, energy, feel better, whatever, save money. Yeah, save money. That is all based on the idea of I have a solution that could be, to your listeners, that could be your services. It could also be software. It could also be any number of things. That thing was built for someone for a reason, or it's that version of something has been shaped in a particular way for someone. That's someone we would call a segment. There's going to be segments within that segment of people that may want their ice cream to be chocolate. They may want it to be pecan. They may want it to be different flavors. Everyone has a different preference. If you try to give everyone the same flavor of ice cream, then A, that's going to, be boring, and B, not everyone's going to want to take a bite. If you stop and think carefully about if I was on the other end of this message, how would I feel? How would I react? Knowing what I know about the person that's going to receive this. That's when you are thinking about the individual in this process, in the sales cycle. You're not thinking about the number. The number matters clearly. Like you said earlier, the best thing about sales, and I would agree, it's very clear when you're succeeding and when you're not succeeding. But
Yeah.
it's important to not lose sight of that person. And yeah, I completely agree. Sitting there and waiting until 2 seconds to to then respond and not thinking about the purpose behind it. It all comes back to basics. You're talking to a person, that person would want your solution for a reason because hopefully your solution was built for that person. All you need to do is connect the dots. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not overly complicated. And I think we've got to this place where yes, there is so much data analysis that's done, and then conclusions are drawn which are super concrete. And what I wanted to do and what the team wanted to do with the research and then the competition we did is to tell you, yes, this is what the data is telling us, but actually it's still dependent on your audience. I can tell you to go and write a 100-word email, use emojis, because it works in this one vertical within this geographic location with people who have just got funding recently. But that doesn't mean it's going to work in anything that's other than that, that segment. So you've got to go back to basics, and it's boring to hear, and I sound like a broken record, but yeah, if you're not thinking about the basics, then you're just over-engineering something very simple.
Yeah. James, how are you on time? Because I want to keep talking to you, but we're at the top of the hour.
I can keep going for probably another 10 minutes.
Deal. Okay, I'll take it. Then let's rapid fire a couple more things. So I think we've already given the people some really helpful stuff. But let me just ask you, high level here, I want to talk about email and how it fits into an overall go-to-market motion. Because the traditional way, especially for MSPs, the traditional perspective for email was either I'm going to hire an agency, they're going to email people for me. So they're using ZoomInfo or Apollo or whatever. They're scrubbing data lists and then emailing them with a slightly changed templated message. Or they think about they buy an email list themselves. They hire somebody on Fiverr to give them a list of email addresses, and then they'll just message them all. Maybe they do it in pieces. Maybe they do it manually. Whatever. But does State of the Cold Email Report have any data about the contextualization of those emails in more of a multi-channel approach, or is that just talking about email as a whole? And even if the report doesn't, do you have any thoughts on where it fits?
Yeah, so I wanted to keep sort of a clear delineation between what this could be and what it is, sorry, and what it could be. I just wanted our team to focus on cold email. So other than the data point
Okay.
there that tells you that the top three channels are email, calling, and LinkedIn, there's nothing really there that talks about the position of cold email in the wider go-to-market mix. But I love talking about this. I'm a big believer in you know whether you are selling into the enterprise, and I think Gartner maybe last year said something ridiculous like, and I believe them by the way, it takes like 30 plus touch points to actually get through to your buying committee, which is wild. Or you're talking about SMBs where it's probably a little bit easier, but it's still a lot of touch points. I think it's in that 14 to
Still
20
still
range.
7 to 10.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
still about 7 to 10 is what we
yeah.
find.
Um, I think if you were to step back as an MSP and firstly just look in the mirror and say, I need to go beyond my network. I need to go beyond these relationships that I've built that I'm able to rely on. The best way to do that actually is to look at something that could amplify your ability to have more relationships in the sales context. And cold email won't replace that. Actually, it's going to help you to create more of it. You won't be selling IT services in your first email. You're going to be inviting someone to have a conversation. So if you can look at everything through that lens, then we can step back again and just think, okay, I'm probably going to be looking at a number of channels here to create that presence, that awareness, with my audience. So the easiest one, the highest trust likely is going to be referrals, but that doesn't scale easily. Then
Mhm.
there's networking and local chambers and business networks, things like that, but that's going to take a lot of time. And again, you can't really scale that. You can do co-marketing. Great, but that's going to be costly. You can do ads. Again, that's going to be costly. But what if you were to do all of these things in little bits and do it in a way where you weight it to the most scalable channel first? The most scalable channel you have available to you is cold email. Then it's LinkedIn, and then you've got cold calling. And cold calling still has a great role to play, but obviously things are a little bit more difficult in a post-COVID world where we're not in the office as much. If you were to look at cold email in this way, and I think this will help listeners to feel more comfortable. I hope it does. If not, hey, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to talk to you. Um, think about being in your house. And when you are looking on a search engine, you are actively looking for a solution. You're looking for MSPs in this area, in my local area. You are showing an intent as a searcher to receive information about that thing. And the person that presents the advert to you has gone through a process of knowing that Brian wants X, Y, and Z in terms of value presented to him. He wants to see these five use cases, whatever it is. There is an understanding of the person that would be searching, so you're trying to match keywords or you're trying to match adverts, display banner adverts to someone who matches this profile you have. That is where you are opening the door. And when you open the door, you perform that search and you go out and you see all these options available to you. Think about cold email as the reverse of that. If I've done my job correctly as a sales rep, I have thought through who Brian is, what Brian's interested in terms of his work. Do you want to get creepy and talk about random stuff that you've somehow stalked and figured
Sure.
out? You know what he's interested in terms of his work, and you have an offer that could really help him. That's low stakes, really low stakes. You're not actually asking for anything other than just a conversation, perhaps, or sharing a link. That again is going through the process of understanding Brian, and it's creating some implied intention there that Brian would be interested in this thing. In this instance,
Hmm.
you've had to walk up to Brian's house and you've had to knock on the door and you have to wait for Brian to want to open that door. The opening of the door is opening that email. Now, once you're into the house, yes, it depends on what you say. You may completely annoy Brian. On the other hand, you may say something that makes him go, yeah, let's grab a Coke and let's talk about what this thing is. If you can look at cold email through that lens and think about it as something that if you've done all the right things in terms of targeting the right people and having the right message, loads of people will see your adverts, but they won't necessarily click on them. Loads of people will see your emails, but they won't necessarily click on them and reply to them if they're not in the right frame of mind at that time to respond. But if you were to combine those cold emails alongside doing networking, alongside tapping into your referrer base, alongside co-marketing, um, alongside content, which still is valuable and obviously can factor into all of these channels, you can start to see that it's just another way to get your message out.
Yeah.
That's such a and it's something that I didn't come up with, oh, it's just the same as an advert by myself. That's through having my best friend being an SDR. That's through the SDRs that I've managed. That's, loads of different people in my career. If you can look at things differently, then you can, that change in perspective can lead you to reevaluate that option. And I think cold email does deserve to be reevaluated by listeners, but it has to feel right. It has to feel like something that should be in your mix, and use it effectively.
Sure. This is a fantastic answer. Even I have a couple of follow-up questions, but on Monday or 2 days ago, I made some cold calls, and I called this guy, and I got a gatekeeper who was like, hey, how can I help you? And I was like, hey, this guy knows who I am, because he does, because we met at a conference like a year ago, and I was like, he's not expecting a call from me, but he knows who I am. I just wanted to invite him to this thing I'm doing next week. Can you just pass me through? And he was like, hang on, I think his conference store might be whatever BS thing. He said, let me ping him on Slack. I'll put you on hold. So I don't make it the gatekeeper. He goes, just tell me what you want to say to him. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll email him and tell him Brian called. So I email him, and I just realized I backed myself into a humble brag. Forgive me. But he responds to the email and says, oh, did, quote, the Brian just reach out to me? Because he follows my content. Mm-hmm. So my content made him know who I was. My cold call died on the table. My email got his attention. And then he converted. So That's a perfect example. I should have done all three of those things. I did the right thing. So what you don't want to do is sometimes when a sales rep starts they start liking every post and they start leaving these generic dumb comments in your LinkedIn, and you're like, oh, I'm in this rep's tractor beam. Yep. And now they're going to machine gun me down for 3 weeks until they get a hold of me. You don't want to feel omnipresent, although, marketers do want to feel that way, but what you don't want, there's a difference between being omnipresent and then making a prospect feel claustrophobic. But thinking about email as a really viable, intentional touch, rather than saying, this is another place where I can say the same thing to everybody. Don't treat your email like a billboard, is what I'm taking away from what you're saying. Yeah. Treat it more like you knocked on their door and you have to say something to this person in their house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Put as much thought into it as you would put that, right?
100%.
I love it. One more quick question, if you don't mind. You said email. What makes email more scalable than LinkedIn? I would think it's the other way around, because don't you still have to source a bunch of contact records, build out an EMS? There's a little bit more infrastructure behind email, wouldn't you say?
I would qualify scalable with effective as well. I think LinkedIn is still a great channel, and I love tools like Expandy. It's definitely in my stack, but it goes back to the very beginning of the episode. And the reality is LinkedIn still isn't that place where you expect to be pitched. LinkedIn at its core, and I know it's not this anymore, and it's a little upsetting. LinkedIn at its core was meant to be a networking platform and a platform to learn. I would argue you now have to go to things like school environments, or that's school with a K, not school environments. I will go to Substacks to really learn nowadays in that B2B or that professional environment. Whereas LinkedIn, I think, is kind of getting polluted with what you said there. I'm in the tractor beam, and I'm going to completely going to get gunned down through spamming now.
Yeah.
So that's why I say cold email is more scalable because the intention aligns more so with what you want here, right? Which is if I get into someone's inbox, it's more intimate. They're probably going to expect some sort of email. They're going to expect emails anyway, but they're especially going to expect emails from someone who has a service to offer. Whereas I think with LinkedIn, we still probably want that to be a space that is not purely being pitched to all the time.
Sure. Right.
And
Yeah, you can.
you know,
That makes sense. Okay.
yeah, 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 and with scaling outreach through email, you know, buying your inboxes is not too expensive, and then paying for a subscription to like Hunter, for instance, it's $49 for our starter plan. Our competitors, it's actually not that far off as well. It's like it's not super costly to get your foot into the door with these platforms and start using them for your outreach. So yeah,
I
I would
love it.
qualify that. Would qualify, yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. I really appreciate that perspective. I'm going to ask you this last question, and then I'm going to let you go. You have twice in this conversation, you have said XYZ. You didn't say XYZ.
Yeah.
Now, was that for my benefit,
No.
or do you just say Z now?
So I'm not sure when this podcast will land, but so my wife is from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm clearly not from the
Okay.
United States. And I
Right.
will be, all things being equal, I'll be moving to the States pretty soon. So I'm in this weird headspace, honestly, and my friends say it all the time. Even my manager, based in Boston. Um, I shift between American English and British English, and it gets very confusing for people. So it wasn't for your benefit. It's my brain, like my processor, trying to deal with whatever language I should be using.
Okay. Okay. So you're just in the middle of a nomadic journey. It
Yeah.
wasn't you. It wasn't a highly calculated example. You should have lied and said, "I did my research, and this is an example of meeting people where they are, and
Right. Yeah.
and all of that." But
Yeah.
okay, I love it. So you're just you're on your way over to the States.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just a confused
Wow.
Brit right now in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in terms of my dialect.
Right. If only what would be great is if you developed inexplicably that transatlantic accent from the 50s that they made up for movies, that nobody really, that fake accent that they
Yeah, yeah,
fabricated to make to
yeah.
sell old time movies. So what we'll do is the next time we have you on in a year or so, we get to ask you all the questions about how moving to the States has changed your philosophy on outreach. Because I mean, I know you target probably the U.S. market more, but I've actually found a shocking amount of similarity in UK and US like marketing, and it's just
Yeah.
not as different as you think it's going to be. But anyway, dude, James, you're a gem. You stayed on really long with me, and I think we got a lot out of this. What I'd love to
Yeah.
do is link either even if it's the cold email like report or some sort of resource that the listeners can get some of the more objective facts and findings from this. I think that would be really helpful. And of course, if somebody wanted to learn more about what you do, what would be the best sort of place for them to get a hold of you or get a hold of Hunter?
Well, the cheesy answer here is to go to Hunter's email finder and type in my name and then hunter.io, then you'll get an email address. But truthfully, my email address is just, reach out to me, james@hunter.io, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm one of those few people that managed to get their LinkedIn URL to just be their name. So it's just James-Milsom.
Nice.
That's my URL. So either is fine,
Well done.
and I'm always open to talk to people. As you can tell, I nerd out on this stuff.
Yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much for being here. You brought a lot to the podcast and hopefully a lot to the MSP community. So thanks again.
Thank you.